Welcome to Story Comic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 431. I'm your host, Barney Smith of StoryComic.com. We're excited to have with us the internationally acclaimed writer and illustrator, Jeff Larkin. Jeff.
Why, thank you, Barney. It's awesome to
How
be
are you
here.
doing? Yeah,
How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. And I have to point out, too, is that your mic sounds amazing. I just have to say is that
Really? Because I'm trying to get a GoFundMe to get a new mic, but that's why I'm really here on this podcast.
So this is exciting, Jeff. You are my fourth guest that's here to talk about the Kids Comic Unite premiere anthology, Let's Go. And I don't know if our mutual friend Patrick Lugo made sure that you were the last guest in the row, because you are actually the editorial leader of the anthology as well.
Yeah, that I am. I've sort of had two functions, and one was to sit on the publishing committee, which Patrick is a member of, and also to lead the editorial committee, which has been a ton of fun. I'm really glad I've learned so much doing it, and we've had a great group of people to work with.
And so talk to us a little bit about this. How did you kind of fall into the role of being one of the folks at the big table, I guess?
I talk a lot, I think, and I think at the beginning of this project, Jana Morishima, who's the grand poobah of the project, basically put this call out to members of the community and said, what do you guys think about this idea? What would you like to do? And I wrote, she'd sort of already put together the publishing committee, but I wrote her a note with these ideas, and she wrote back and said, well, maybe you should join us. And we started off as just this publishing committee trying to figure out, what are we doing? And then we decided that we needed to break off into different committees. And one of them would be editorial. And since I had indicated on the intake form that's what I was interested in, Jana just asked, why don't you be the liaison to the editorial? Because they wanted somebody to go between committees. The publishing committee is kind of the overarching committee, and then all the other committees report back to it. So I went to be the liaison, and I just kind of naturally became sort of the leader, just helping organize. Although it's a very kind of, we try and make sure everybody has a voice in the committee, and we all speak, and I just kind of facilitate, really, is what I do.
Mm. And now, in order to be a part of one of the committees for the anthology, do you have to also submit a story for the anthology as well?
You don't. Generally, that's how it all started. There were actually people who were going to submit, but then life got busy, and they decided they would not submit, but they would continue working in their committees, which was fantastic. We've got a few people who've done a ton of work on committees, even though they won't be in the book. They'll definitely be acknowledged in the book because we couldn't have done it without them.
Can you talk to us about what your story is in the anthology?
Sure. My story is called Reception, and I can't give away the ending because it's the final panel that you really realize what's going on. But the setup is that this family is traveling on a road trip through the desert when their car breaks down. And they have to hike into a town, and it's this sort of Wild West town where they meet odd people there. And I won't tell you the ending, but you'll have to actually buy the book, coming soon, to get the ending. But there's kind of a fun twist ending to it. I think it's hard because I was trying to set up so you can go back and go, oh, that was set up earlier. Oh, I get it. But that's what it's about. We came up with this idea of a journey theme. So that's where that story idea came from, a physical journey of like a road trip.
How did you approach the responsibility of advising on which creators and stories should be included in the anthology?
Yeah, that was a big question for us because we'd looked at other anthologies, and we were kind of ballparking. We want to do around a 200-page book, and I think we had around 35, almost 40 people signed up at the very beginning. It's like, okay, how are we going to fit all those people into the book? Are we going to do sort of a competitive thing where, we might get only 10 people submitting 20-page stories, or are we going to do shorter stories? And we really decided that this needed to be a community project. So what we did was we decided that we would include everybody who had signed up. They'd get at least a 2-page comic. They could submit up to an 8-page comic, but if they got a 2-page comic done, that would for sure be in the anthology. So we tried to make it all inclusive.
What challenges did you face in setting submission requirements and managing those content parameters then?
Well, we had to decide certain things like who is our target audience.
Okay.
So we are Kids Comics Unite, and that can range from young kids to, YA type kids. But our kind of sweet spot is really in middle grade. So that was one of the parameters that we set out early, is that we're going to appeal around from 7 to 11 age group, and therefore the content needs to be appropriate to that. So you couldn't do anything too racy. We didn't want to get into politics. We had to be careful about not triggering people in terms of what's happening in the world politically. But generally, everybody's been fantastic. There's a pretty common kind of outlook in Kids Comics Unite. People are on the same page about kind of what kids enjoy. So there wasn't much trouble in terms of defining what people could do.
Mm. And so, with that said, how did you handle giving editorial feedback to creators as they kind of progress through making their comics?
It was, it's been sort of it's changed as we've progressed over time. At the very beginning, we had a submission date back in September. And for these, when we got all the comics across the transom, what we did was we put them in folders on our Google Drives, and we all dropped comments on the PDFs. There was 6 editors in the editorial committee. There was also a group of people in the design committee who also dropped notes on the comics. And then we got together in a Zoom meeting, and we would just talk about all the comics and okay, what are the common things that is working or not working about this comic, both technically in terms of does the comic fit the page guidelines that design had set out? Does it fit the theme brief that we had set out about the journey? That kind of stuff. And then what we did was we assigned individual editors to each creator. And those people went out and did one-on-ones, relaying the notes to people. We've had a couple of different stages along the way. The first submission was just very rough thumbnails were fine with one color finish was needed. And then we had our next submission in early January was whatever the comic needed per the discussion with your editor. In February, we had an inks deadline. And then just last week, we had our final deadline with colors.
Okay. So I'm kind of curious, can you share any memorable experiences or challenge you faced during this project?
Management of a project like this it's a big machine that we're trying to kind of manage. So it's been really interesting and fun, and it's had challenges. I think we've learned a ton. We all went into this saying we're going to learn, we're going to get things wrong, and we're going to be fine with that. But it's like we have a big kitchen with a lot of cooks in it, and sometimes communication. It's like, okay, who do I talk to about that? So that kind of stuff. But I think we've done a really good job with it. And we've learned ton for the next time we do this as well. Some of the stuff that I've learned, challenges. We had one comic come across that could potentially be triggering to some readers because there was a phrase in it that could have been associated with a political phrase that might trigger people. And it was not the intention of the creator at all to do that, but a number of us sort of like, oh, we can kind of hear it in that. So we had to ask that creator if they could soften it, which they did. And it was not a problem at all. What other challenges? One of the challenges is just getting people on the same page in terms of the physical page. The guidelines of where to put your art, what size your page is, all of that stuff. Some software does things differently than other software. So there was a little kind of sorting out of that to do, but we're all good for that now.
Okay. Now, so we mentioned too that you actually have a theater background as well. So I'm really curious of like what tools or techniques from your theater background did you find most useful in storytelling for comics?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. It's I also I went from theater and I also have written screenplays. So I kind of have studied all the screenwriting books out there and have a very kind of boiled down 3 act structure kind of in the back of my head when I write. You know, character has a problem or an objective, and the story question is, do they solve it by the end? So story structure is the writing side of it, and then the visual part of it is like, can this be done visually? Can I do this in panels that have no words in them from time to time? um, I've also worked as a theatrical photographer, so I would shoot shows, and I'd always look for the high moment in a scene. You know, what's the climactic moment in a scene? And I think that work has been good training to find the same sort of moment in an illustration as well. Um, so I think that theater has been super helpful.
Um, and so as the yeah, being a part and sitting in the role that you're in, um, what do you hope readers, especially the young ones, take away from this anthology?
I hope they have a fun time. I mean, I'm in the sort of, I love adventure and humor, and I just want to make kids giggle and have a fun time. There are more serious pieces in the book, which will hit kids more emotionally. And I basically just getting the kids into the story and, losing themselves in the story for a time. If they can engage with it, I think that's our chief goal, is just to give them this kind of, it's not necessarily fantasy, but it is kind of like, it's like, we talked about theater, Barney. You have a theater background too. It's like, it's when that curtain goes up, you enter a different world. And that's what we hope to do with our stories.
Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. And thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. So, what advice would you give someone who's interested in transitioning from another art form to comics?
Um, Advice that I totally disregarded when I started this. And that was to write short at the beginning. Um, get some things under your belt, because it's really good to finish something. I jumped into this with trying to work on a 200-page graphic memoir. Um, it was ambitious, because I was coming out of picture books too. I don't want to do 32 pages. I can do that. I'll just do 200 pages. I was like, oh, I had so much to learn. So if you can get involved in an anthology like this one, or even if you're just putting up comics on the web, or if you're making zines or any little short comics that you can actually get finished, move on to the next one, and you just learn about the comics language as you do
Okay.
that.
All right. So, as you know, the internet is forever. So if somebody is watching this interview 5 years from now and they're like, oh shucks darn, I just learned about this anthology by watching this interview, how am I ever going to find a copy of Kids Comics Unite's first anthology, Let's Go? Where could they get that in 5 years from now?
I'll probably have a stack in my garage, so you can come to my place. Um, they're going to be available through Kids Comics Unite. We're doing a print run, so we will probably sell out of our print run. Whether or not we do another print after that, we're not sure, but we're definitely also going to do print on demand. There is a campaign that is coming up, and when that campaign's done, then we'll probably switch over to print on demand.
Jeff, if people want to learn more about you and your work, where's the best place they could go to?
I am jefflarkinart.com is my website. I'm really not awesome on the socials yet. That is another part of this project, which I'm excited about learning more about the socials and getting more engaged with it in the next month or two.
jefflarkinart.com, and you can check out all of his artwork on here, his graphic novel that he's been working on, Bots About Town. That is a really fun setup that you're doing with that too. That's fun.
That was a fun pandemic project. I was just going crazy in the house, so I just went out and shot stuff around town, and then I just composited. I do some work with 3D models, so that was compositing 3D models into shots around town.
That's really fun. Oh. Yeah, Jeff Larkin, jefflarkinart.com. Perfect. And I am excited, Jeff. I am definitely going to be in one of the backers for the kids. As I say, as a lurker at the Kids Comic Unite page. I've been a member for, I don't know, like 4 years, but I just pretty much hang out in the background watching what's happening. But that's interesting. So very excited. And I see you have a picture of some rats in that New York City, huh?
I
Yeah.
do. That was City Mouse, or Country Mouse, City Rat, obviously. And I have actually seen a rat carry pizza in the city.
Right.
I've seen that before with my own eyes.
That's right. And also, Jeff, as of this moment now, you're also one of the Canadians that know that little trivia that Alberta is rat free.
That is so exciting to learn that today. I did not know that. I've been to Alberta a few times in my life. I did not notice rats when I was there, and now I know why.
See, look at that. That's exciting stuff.
Burning in the back of my head. Why did I not see rats there?
And then also to learn more about the anthology, you could go to kidscomic.unite.com/anthology, and you'll learn all the things about the anthology. So I know you haven't even launched the first anthology, but talking to the other folks, is this going to be an annual or a regular thing? Kids Comics Unite's putting out anthologies.
I really hope so. We have a fantastic community there's really talented people. Like, seeing what's come over the transom is really exciting. So this book is going to be really good. And I think we should do it again. We've also learned how to do it, so we can do it even better next time.
Right.
So yeah, I would say, there will definitely be another version of this.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. And hey, listen, when Clutch comes out, you got to come back on the show and we'll talk all the things about your graphic novel. So
awesome. Thank you so much, Brian. Really,
you're welcome. So I asked all of my Canadian guests this question. It's a little trivia, and I want to see where you fit on this.
Sure.
Half of them know this, and the other half have no idea about this. So I'm going to see where you fit on this one, then, Jeff. So, did you know that Alberta has 0 rats?
Um, I did not know that. It would make sense to me though, because I don't want to diss Alberta, but what's wrong with rats? Come on.
So there was it was I was listening to this podcast, and it was talking about how um it was about like these like the Alberta rat war or something like this. So it was like in the 1950s. There was this huge campaign, public campaign, that rats carry diseases, so kill every rat that you see, and it was basically a genocide for the 50 years, like 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And to this day, they still have the Alberta Department of Health still has the 0 rat policy. Every rat has ever been. So there's actually people that live in Alberta that have never even seen what a rat looks like. So
Wow.
to this day, yeah,
They're
yeah.
missing out. Like, who carries the pizza up the subway steps in Alberta?
I know. See,